Welcome to Divorced from Reality with Johnny Bardine.
Welcome to Divorce from Reality with Johnny Bardine. Johnny is a dedicated attorney who has been serving the Tampa Bay community for over a decade. With a mission to help individuals and families through their most challenging times, Johnny provides compassionate, fierce advocacy in divorce, foreclosure, personal injury, and probate matters. I'm Lisa Mosbey, your host, and today's episode, we are talking about prenuptial and postnuptial agreements in Florida and how these documents can bring clarity and peace of mind to a marriage. Johnny, thanks for joining me again today.
Lisa, good to see you.
You know, Johnny, a lot of people hear the word prenup and immediately think it means someone doesn't trust their partner. How do you explain what a prenuptial agreement really is and what purpose it serves?
And that's a really great question. And when people hear prenup, it can feel like a red flag, but it's really about planning for the future. So a prenup agreement is simply a legal contract between partners before marriage that outlines how assets and debts will be handled in the event of a divorce or separation. It serves to protect both parties and clarify financial responsibilities and can even help streamline the divorce process if it ever comes to that.
And then what's the difference between a prenup and a postnuptial agreement? And when might each one make sense for a couple?
The main difference lies in timing. A prenuptial agreement is signed before marriage, while a postnuptial agreement is created after marriage. So couples might consider a prenup before tying the knot to set out clear expectations. A postnup could be useful if circumstances change during the course of the marriage, like significant changes in income or the acquisition of new assets.
Yeah, I think of it in terms of somebody may have received a large inheritance at some point, and that might be a time for a postnup. That's what comes to mind for me. But
And that's generally how it, that's one of the main reasons why people would consider that, because to ensure that inheritance inures to the benefit of the party who is the beneficiary of the decedent, rather than being commingled in the marital funds.
yeah, in your experience, what kinds of issues can a prenup or a postnup cover here in Florida, and like property, debt, alimony, maybe inheritance, like we'd mentioned?
Right. And in Florida, prenups and postups can cover a variety of issues, including property division, debt
Yeah.
responsibility, alimony, and like you said, even inheritance rights. They can clarify who gets what and help avoid lengthy disputes later on, which is especially important in high stakes marriages. I think the thrust of most prenups is that each party keeps what they came to the marriage with, and then along with that, also keeps the benefits, the accrual in interest or the accrual in value of those premarital assets.
Johnny, are there limits to what couples can include in these agreements or topics that maybe Florida courts don't generally enforce?
Absolutely. For example, Florida courts won't enforce agreements that include provisions for child support or child custody, as those decisions are made based on the best interests of the child or children at the time of the divorce. Additionally, any provisions that are subsequently deemed unconscionable or violate public policy may not hold up in court.
And then how does the law ensure that both people enter into the agreement voluntarily and with full understanding of what they're signing?
The law requires that both parties enter into these agreements voluntarily and with full understanding. This typically involves having independent legal representation for both sides, which helps ensure that each person is informed about the rights and the implications of the agreement they're signing. Further, the I think the timing of the negotiation and signing of the prenuptial agreement is important. If it's too close to the date of marriage, I think there's a probably a valid challenge that maybe it was entered into under duress or under influence. So getting that signed well in advance of when you plan to be married, if possible, is important.
And then what are some common misconceptions that you hear about for prenups? Things people believe that just aren't true once they see how the process really works.
I think one big misconception is that prenups are only for the wealthy or that they indicate a lack of trust, when in reality, I think they can provide a peace of mind to couples of all financial backgrounds and foster open conversation about finances. They're not just about preparing for divorce. They're about creating a shared financial future.
Shared responsibility, shared financial future, plans for the future, because we don't know what's going to happen or how it's going to unfold.
Right.
For couples who already have children or plan to blend their families, how can these agreements help protect everyone's financial stability or reduce the conflict later on?
For couples blending families, prenups and postnups can help clarify financial responsibilities and protect each party's children from previous relationships. They can specify how assets will be divided and ensure that, for example, the children's inheritances are safeguarded, which can reduce conflict and provide stability. Again, I want to reiterate that they cannot govern child custody or parental responsibility or child support.
So can you compare that to maybe a trust or a will or something of other nature, other document, other legal entity? Because those can also be taken care of there. Why would they be taken care of in the prenup versus after the fact?
Well, I think belts and suspenders they can be taken care of in other avenues, but I think if you can
Okay.
shore up or reiterate those safeguards in a prenup or postup document and hopefully avoid uh, problems later, I think you should do that.
And does one supersede the other? Would a prenup supersede something that you created later after being married for a while?
The prenuptial agreement would specify that whether it's being superseded or subsequent to. But generally speaking, the prenup would make reference to, for example, a trust that was entered into before the prenup and determine how that's uh, handled. Usually, the estate document would be controlling over the prenup, or the prenup would say that uh, that those financial distributions are going to be handled according to the trust.
And then, Johnny, conversations about money can be uncomfortable. How do you coach clients to approach this topic in a way that feels healthy, respectful, friendly rather than awkward or defensive?
Right. Money talks can be tough, right? So I advise clients to approach these discussions with openness and honesty. It's helpful to frame the conversation around shared goals and values rather than focusing solely on what could go wrong. Using I statements can express concerns without uh, sounding accusatory. So I think having framing the discussion around what the couple wants to do together and how that's going to work. I think that's an important part of that discussion.
Do you have a list of questions that you go through when you're interviewing folks, when you're doing that intake or consult with them, to help you make sure that they're both on the same page? Because I can see where sometimes we don't always have those conversations before getting married. How many kids are we going to have might be something you talk about, but financial planning or future planning isn't always a subject that comes up. How do you help people ease into that?
Sure, and I actually did that already this morning before we started this recording. I have a very lengthy and exhaustive intake questionnaire that I send to clients to fill out. That is uh, quite thorough and I think brings to mind some things they might not have already considered about what their goals are in the prenuptial agreement.
So if they each fill that out, then one of them would take it to their attorney because you said there's 2 attorneys involved, and then do you communicate with the attorney or do you communicate with both parties? How does that process actually unfold?
Good question. So when I'm the drafting attorney, I'll send that intake questionnaire to the client. He or she will fill it out. I'll then draft the agreement, uh, and then my client and I will go through that to make sure it's the draft that we want to present. And then during that drafting period, the other party will often retain an attorney to review and help revise that agreement. And then after that attorney is hired, then I'll send the draft directly to that counsel, and then we'll go back and forth and do our best to review it and finalize it in a conciliatory matter, and then execute it once both parties agree with that.
So, Johnny, where I'd like to wrap this episode up is if someone listening is considering a prenup or a postnup, what's the first step they should take to start the process thoughtfully? Is it talk to you or talk to their spouse or something in between?
Yeah, talk to their spouse. So talk to their soon-to-be spouse. If you're considering a prenup or postnup, the first step is to have a candid conversation with your partner about your financial situation and your goals for the future. Then you consult a qualified attorney who specializes in family law to guide you through that process and help craft an agreement that meets both your needs.
Beautiful. Any final thoughts for folks who are listening to this and might need some guidance?
Yeah, so I think a lot about the Robert Frost line from one of his poems that good fences make good neighbors, and so if you approach it with the idea that you're trying to build something together and not simply troubleshooting for a future divorce, I think you come at it with a good frame of mind and one that I think is encouraging for the future rather than suspicious of the future.
We'll leave it there. That's well said. Folks, thank you so much for listening to Divorced from Reality with Johnny Bardine. For more information to connect with Johnny, visit bardinelawfirm.com. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and leave a review if you found this episode helpful. We'll see you next time.
Thank you so much.
Thanks for watching. Be sure to hit that like and subscribe button and leave us a review in the comments.